I should say that we are actually filming Flamenco Cafe from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. We're sitting here with Josue Tacoronte, and he's from Havana, Cuba. And the system of schooling is quite different because he was saying that in his time, at the age of about 10, perhaps 100 students would be selected to audition for a music school or for sports or for dance, and perhaps 30 would get accepted each time. Josue, you entered music school when you were 10 years old, and you ultimately selected classical guitar. So this is a conservatory of music, and you studied at the age of 10?
Yes, I studied in the conservatory 10.
So from the age of 10 to the end of high school, which is 17 or 18 here in Canada, how long were you at the conservatory for?
We have 3 seasons. The first elementary, 10 and to 14.
So from the age of 15 to...
The 15 to 18.
To 18, that's when everyone
It's technical
comes.
middle, it's like high school. And 18 and 23 is the university.
It continues.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yeah, we have 3 levels.
So this is hours and hours of practicing from the age of 10 all the way to 23 for you.
Yes, but I learned flamenco before to finish this.
When did you find flamenco?
19 year maybe in the contest I played the sonata española, the Turina, and the third movement used rajeo.
Yeah.
But I need to win, no? I want.
You wanted to win the competition.
Yeah, but all guitar classical don't like the rajeo is not important for them. But okay, I need. How is the rajeo? My sister Barbara, she lives in Spain. She has present for me the book in the método de Batista how play
Guitar.
the different rasgueo.
The flamenco technique, rajeo.
Exactly.
Okay.
And yo solía how play bulería. Yo, what's that?
So
Solía
you
bulería
learned
en
to
inglés.
play flamenco from a book?
Yes.
What?
Yes, because we don't have YouTube, Facebook, nothing. Only
A book?
Yes, we have one festival in Havana, Tsleil-Waututh. It's the festival. It's about the different, Lola Flores, many artists come to Cuba, and this is 1 week.
So this is
Antonio
1996?
Canales, Maria Pajes. I go to the guitarist playing, it's wow, it is how they play that. But when I have the book, Solia, what is that? Solia and seguirilla, the rajeo, standard, 1, 2, 3 fingers, come back, or abanico. Okay, I want that. And play the sonata, Turina, wow, I win the contest.
Oscar, how did you begin flamenco? Because you started out with the Mexican folklore and Aztec dancing, so how did you make that leap from there to Spanish dance and then to flamenco?
Well, it was a gradual transition because Mrs. Aguilar, who taught us Mexican folk dances, as I said, introduced us gradually to Spanish folk dance and then flamenco. But it was a very rudimentary type of flamenco. But I remember that I liked the music and the rhythm of the flamenco guitar. And if I look back on it now, it was the singing that I found very haunting. And of course, years later, I found out that it's all about the singing. The dance is secondary and the music is also, in a sense, secondary to the cante, to the song forms. And I remember listening to an album that Carmen Amaya had recorded, Queen of the Gypsies, and Sďwx played on that. It's for anybody who doesn't have a copy of that, I would say try to get a recording of that album because it's a wonderful introduction to flamenco, the power of Carmen Amaya and Sďwx. And Domingo Alvarado was the singer. He had a beautiful voice and I found it very haunting. So that was my attraction to flamenco dance.
But what year was that? And that was in LA.
And that would have been around 1964, 63 when I was in high school. And
Was Spanish dance popular there? Could you just see Spanish dance in flamenco?
No, it was very seldom that you could see it actually. If a movie came into town that had featured Lola Flores, for example, she did some Spanish flamenco dance, and cante. So that was kind of my first introduction to the world of flamenco in terms of film. But like Jose was saying, we didn't have access to YouTube. No internet, no anything. So everything we learned, we had to memorize. And so we would take our classes with Mrs. Aguilar and then go home and practice. My mother allowed me to practice in the living room, and eventually my brother built me a little floor in the garage in the back of the house, so I would practice there. And my mother in particular was pretty good about allowing me to do that because it was very noisy.
Yeah.
So that was my introduction to flamenco.
And so I'm curious about the start for flamenco, because you said that you took public community classes for the Mexican folk dancing, and then presumably flamenco was kind of expensive and exclusive back then, right?
Right.
It was actually Mrs. Aguilar's daughters that taught you some flamenco.
Yes, Rosemary and Blanca Aguilar were her assistant teachers, and they had studied with flamenco dance teachers that were very famous at the time. I forget his first name, but I think it was Eduardo Cancino, who was the parent of Rita Hayward. Her real name was Cancino. They taught the girls, and so Blanca and Rosemary would teach us flamenco.
So what would you do, sevillanas or fandango or bulería?
We started with sevillanas and fandango, forget bulerías. and
so it's still Spanish folk dancing.
Yeah, some type of samba or tangos, I remember. The way I was able to afford those lessons is because Mrs. Aguilar really saw talent in me. So she said, you can come and take lessons at our private studio, not at the gym. And if you don't have money to pay, you can work it off. So I would go and work on her garden. I would chop the banana trees and do her gardening for her, and that was in exchange for my lessons. So I was again very
so lucky for us that you learned how to do flamenco there.
Yeah, and then I learned about teachers like Luisa Triana and Lola Montes and Juan Talavera, and so I got more serious in flamenco, and flamenco became more popular. So we really got into flamenco then.
Flamenco had a scene in LA in the 60s and 70s,
It
right?
did. There were clubs. There was El Cid. There were 2 or 3 or 4 clubs in the west side of Los Angeles where flamenco was presented. Carmen Amaya played there for a few months. It gained popularity in the 60s.
I had the opportunity for start the flamenco in the Ballet Español of Cuba, and what's important for me because it's how learn the composition music and how play the guitar for accompanying dance. I go to the director Eduardo Beitia. Thanks Eduardo Beitia for your patience. I play Solia. How I learn the
book.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He is choreographer, no musician, but he feel okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come play with us, no? I'm the one, the dancer. 1, 2, 3, 4. Where is the time now, no? Yeah, I don't know.
You didn't know
nothing about the flamenco.
So you were training there.
Yes, this is exactly.
But was there a guitarist? Was there a guitarist teaching you, or was the dancer teaching you?
They have other guitar, but he is popular music, no classical music. The communication language is different.
Yeah, for sure.
But I need to learn popular music now. Because when I finish the classical guitar, you feel, I am now a musician, but no. No, the popular music is other school, right? It's other, how do you say, career.
So just to give a little bit of background, Josue's been my guest guitarist since 2019. And I've always found it a little bit curious working with him. And now this explains a lot because we started working together in Flamenco Puro, which is like all programming in Cuadro Flamenco. And then from that experience, we were in the restaurant, and then we migrated to other projects, which he was able to do a little bit easily. So one of our projects is flamenco contemporary music, where it's kind of fusing ideas for flamenco from the different palos of flamenco, but blending it into very contemporary sounds and almost out of the flamenco scene, which he was able to jump in with. And then we have a whole other project, which is this Ida y Vuelta, which is original compositions that he's created, like the milonga, the viralita, the colombiana, taking music and creating original compositions, but they're actually set and they're scored.